jurisdictions that don't have a baseline,
Yeah.
you will be forced to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. So you're from a marketing background, and when you first started EasyLaw, I just wonder, how did you familiarize yourself with the legal practice industry, and what are the key challenges you face as an entrepreneur coming from a whole different industry altogether?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting background where when you are from marketing and you are trying to talk to lawyers, it is like a gap over there. The gap is more on my knowledge about the terms that they are using, their mindset. So I actually take some time to kind of like adapt to this industry where I spend some time to really talk to them to understand, hey, what kind of things that is going to interest you guys? Like to me, from a marketing point of view, there are a lot of things that is going to interest me. But due to where in Malaysia, that is something that they couldn't like advertise. So a lot of great ideas that I wanted to share with them can't be used in this legal industry. So that's why when I'm in this, so like really struggling a little bit where I need to understand I didn't even know what's the difference between a litigation lawyer, corporate lawyer, and conveyancing lawyer. I thought you guys are lawyers. Like, why are you have so many different types? So, and each of the different lawyers, if let's say you're in different area of practice, you have different of mindset. You need different software. You need different technology. You are working with different type of clients. So it took me some time to kind of like overcome this, but it all turns out well for me because I think when you try to go into another industry from a different background, it actually gives you another kind of advantage where you know stuff that people don't know. And people are able to teach you stuff that you don't know. So it's kind of like a win for me. Yeah.
So we've touched on the market, we've touched on your specific jurisdictions, we've touched on, the technology uptake and whatnot. Let's get into a bit more spicy conversation. Let's talk diversity, right? So from ladies, from your experience and observation, do you think there is a difference in barriers to entry into the legal tech industry between the genders, and why? Can you go first?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I remember when every time I'm presenting on stage, whether it's to pitch my business ideas, whether it's to participate in any competition, anything that is startup related or technology related, I am the outliers where I stand about 10 to 20% of the crowd. The rest are the guys. So I think it comes down to this is come down to the mindset of women, as well as the mindset is this. A lot of women, we think we are not good enough. I don't know when we are going to think that we are good enough, but in general, all the women that I know, as compared to the peers, if let's say a guy and a lady, okay, they are better off than the guy, but then they are afraid to say that, hey, I think I'm good. We have this kind of like perfectionist inside us. Like, you know what, if let's say I don't do it 100%, I cannot say I'm good. But I feel like guys are a little bit different. It is the way that we were born. It's just like when women are from Venus, men are from Mars. So guys, when they are born, they have this, you know what, they have to tell the whole world, you know what, I'm good, I'm confident. Even though maybe just inside of them, they'll be like, yeah, can I? But then they will say, their father will say, you know what, guys, just go ahead. So I think coming from this background, especially when you mentioned it's cultural difference, we were being brought up in such an environment, not only in legal tech, but also in any tech events that I've seen also have this issue. I kind of feel this is how we were being born and we were being brought up. And it will take times to actually have a change. So that's where we have this conversation. Thanks to Adeline and Santi for organizing this.
TERRI, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this while the men in the room are just throwing a hissy fit.
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to, for the tech part of it, it goes back to STEM more broadly, right? And that it just hasn't been a thing that women, unfortunately, have tended to take up. So it just hasn't. And there's a big push now in Australia, and I think it's probably fair to say globally, with getting young women into studying STEM, anything, starting at primary school level, so that it's fun working with technology and they're interested in it, and it's something that they want to do and go on and do when they decide to go to university. So I think it's a systemic issue actually around getting women into that area. And so, you know, it follows, I guess, that as you go down the line, that there's less women that have gone into technology or engineering, or those sorts of things that, you know, come around in terms of thinking about technology and legal tech. But I think as you get kind of more towards the area that June was speaking about, you know, and I know that we're going to get into this, but the funding of women entrepreneurs is a huge issue when we start looking at tech as a business, and establishing those businesses and taking those businesses forward. So I won't say anything more on that because I know we're going to come to that in just a second. But I think that there is a gender disparity. I think it's a systemic issue, but particularly now, right now, looking at legal tech, funding is one of the big issues to overcome that as well, I think.
Totally hear you. And yes, we will be getting to that in a bit, right after I hear from Serena. So cultural or systemic?
Well, you know, legal tech's a big field in itself, right? So I have a different take from my, I guess, from my seat as an entrepreneur, right? So looking at my company, yeah, you know, the back end coding stuff and the database stuff, yeah, it's mainly men, right? But the women do certain things better. I like to think that they run better companies. Training, implementation, workflow, even just studying, you know, how people work, right? So there's a lot that I think that women actually do, you know, well in, and marketing, of course, right? Having that conversation, listening. So I do see in Singapore that there are quite a number of women who have come into legal tech and who head these companies. From my perspective as well, you know, and the men have got certain pressures which actually make it not so conducive for them to actually just not stay a lawyer, right? Because my alternative was, do I continue practice or do I go into legal tech where I'm paid a lot less? So the men actually would not take that. It would take quite, an unusual man to actually say, right, at this stage at least, you know, until it's proven that it's going to be something that you can make big bucks from. And in Singapore, that's hard because our market is small, right? So there are certain pros and cons, and I do think that, you know, that's why, you know, I wouldn't really say that there is a, in that sense that, you know, there's a gender bias. I think that certain things are done better than, you know, I do think that, you know, like women and men have different skill sets, they complement each other. And, you know, that's how I try to then get the best from everybody to make that synergy work.
I think that has truth to it as well. Everybody has their own strengths, and we kind of just have this equilibrium that we are seeking to reach, right? So TERRI has also mentioned about funding, and as a basis for all industry, and also responsibilities between the genders, for instance, it all boils down in the capitalistic world, money. So research from the Diversity in Legal Tech is Time for Action report just basically says that not only do women seem to be raising less funding than their male counterparts, they are also less likely to raise subsequent rounds, retain less equity in their companies, and ceding more control to investors. So all three of you are entrepreneurs, all three of you have encountered business structures within legal tech and legal innovation. Have you encountered the same issues, either personally or vicariously, and how can we as a community overcome this kind of a gap? TERRI, would you like to take this on?
Sure. I'm going to take it slightly in reverse order if I can, and look at, you know, how do you overcome that? And I guess that, you know, the way that I look at that is that it's really important for women entrepreneurs in legal tech to kind of, I guess the expression is find their tribe. So whether that's women in tech through the International Legal Technology Association or the American Bar Association, or the Legal Innovation and Technology Committee, which is a new in-house committee that we have in Australia, or at the end of this month, the Australian Legal Technology Association will launch their women's initiative, which is focusing on women in tech. I think that's important, but I also think it's really important to go outside legal, because legal technology is one part of technology, but the legal industry has not been leading the way, let's be quite frank, in technology. So I think that it's really important for folks that are interested in technology to go outside and be part of things like the Women in Tech Fest, which is about to come up, and the Women in Tech organisations and things like Girls Who Code. So I think it's really important that you surround yourself with a network of people that can give you advice and guidance, but have also been there and done it. That to become part of that community is also ultimately to give back to that community. So I think that it's really, really important to do that. In terms of an absence of funding, I haven't personally found that for my businesses, but also I have to say maybe that was because I started at a different point. I started having already been a practicing lawyer, or I started having already worked in the industry that I was kind of looking to establish something from. I wasn't starting from scratch as basically an entrepreneur straight out of school or straight out of university. And those circumstances, I think there are differences depending on what the base is that you're coming from in a way.
So you mentioned that you started in private practice, and I would like to understand a little bit more. When you start in private practice, what kind of key experiences that during your practice actually spark an interest to enter, legal innovation and legal tech space on a full-time basis, like for you, TERRI?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I guess because I think that when I looked at the industry, things just had to change as far as innovation is concerned, or almost transformation in a way. I look at the situation where, in Australia, 75 to 80% of the people with a legal problem cannot access legal advice for a bunch of different reasons. But very often, very high on that reason is that it's not affordable to them, but it's also not accessible to them. And so there had to be a way. Most of us go into law school because we basically want to provide a service to our clients. We want to help people. And if we're not helping 80% of the people that we want to, then there's something's not working with the system. Yeah. So, to me, it's kind of like, for me, it was like, how can we transform practice to do what we actually went into law school to do? How can that happen? And I think technology came along as a bit of a catalyst, an enabler to help that happen. And in between all of that, helped us do things, to go back to what we were saying earlier, more effectively and more efficiently along the way, in a way that was much more client-centric than perhaps we had been, or user-centric than we had been before. So for me, it was the puzzle of, we can do better, we can do more. It won't be doing the same stuff differently, it might be doing different stuff differently. And there's an opportunity to do that because we're smart people, great critical thinkers. We can solve complex problems. We've got the skill set, we're creative. We must be able to fix this. So why don't we just kind of get together and do that?
Yeah.
So that's what excited me about it.
Yeah. Is that the same thing that excited you to kickstart Bizibody and Litigation Edge as well, SERENA? Because you used to be in private practice too.
Yeah. Right. Not really, because at that time, yeah. Okay, so number one, I wasn't a litigator, and I was really doing corporate work, and making money for big corporations was just not exciting for me, right? So I really just needed to get away from that. But when I then started Bizibody, and especially when I started doing litigation, I could really then actually go closer to my roots of, right, law is really at the end about the community that you are serving. And litigation here is so expensive still, right? And so much of that can actually be automated away. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do, but a lot of it can be automated away. So then I could see that that technology could be really pivotal to making, and that's when it hit me. And there were times where I also had to go to court because we were supporting certain cases, and we were working directly with the plaintiff in person or the defendant in person, and they would work just with a lit support company. So it really, especially in I think in litigation, that's something that technology can really solve, access to justice. I find corporate services or legal corporate services for SMEs a harder one to tackle. I don't really have a great solution for that yet, but I'm trying to solve the litigation one. And then I guess the last motivator was really because I used to be a lawyer. When I look at the lawyers and they're unhappy, right? Their work is not giving them any more pleasure. You've also now got the great resignation, and that will cause a problem in access to justice as well. So I do see that it is critical that we that the technology piece is there, and now is the time. People are now open to it. They see that, right, it can be done differently. Your younger people are saying, I'm not going to take any more of this. Your clients are saying, can you use technology please, because you're too expensive. So I think it's converging. These factors are all converging, and when I first started, it's really hard, but I would just say every year will get better, right? And it does. But I think that pace will and must increase a lot more, right? Is the change has been quite incremental, and I can say from 20 years till now, it's a bit sad that if our star solution is still a practice management system, there has been not a lot of innovation, right? So I think that we can do a lot better.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We can do a lot better. And one of the key steps I think to do a lot better is to put your eggs in the right basket, to make the right investment. So all of you as women in STEM, what would you say is the most important investment to make in order to excel in what you do, be it in legal innovation or legal practice in these industries? Maybe you should start with June.
I think it's mixing with the right community, because sometimes if, let's say, being an entrepreneur, whether you're a law firm owner or you're just alone, if, let's say, you're working in a team of people having the same vision as you, it's get easier because you get to share different stuff together, just like what TERRI said just now. We get to share all the different resources, all the information. When you felt like you aren't alone, it is easier for you to get to the right resources. So I think that's something that is quite important for us to take forward.